The snow had been falling for hours, a quiet and relentless curtain of white that blurred the edges of the world. It transformed the familiar shapes of the forest into soft, rounded mounds, erasing the paths and muffling every sound until the only thing left was the gentle, whispering hiss of flakes against the windowpane. Inside the small cabin, the world was a different place entirely. A single room, filled with the scent of dry pine and old wood, was lit by the warm, flickering glow of a cast iron stove. The fire within it crackled and popped, a small contained conversation between the flames and the wood, casting dancing shadows that stretched and curled along the log walls. Outside, the wind began to stir, a low, soft moan that swept through the treetops, carrying with it another wave of snow. The sound was a constant, distant sigh, like the breathing of the forest itself. It was not an aggressive wind, but a steady, persistent one, a reminder of the vast, sleeping wilderness that surrounded the small sanctuary. The glass of the window was cold to the touch, a thin barrier between the warmth inside and the growing cold outside. Tiny, intricate patterns of frost were beginning to form at the corners, delicate filigrees of ice that caught the firelight and scattered them into miniature, shimmering points of light. A single lamp sat on a small, rough-hewn wooden table beside a worn armchair. The light it cast was softer than the fire's, a pool of golden illumination that fell upon the pages of a book left open, its spine cracked and its edges softened by age. The air was still and heavy, filled with the earthy aroma of the burning wood and the faint, sweet scent of pine needles that had fallen from the coats brought in from the cold. The room felt like a held breath, a moment suspended in time, insulated and safe from the elements that were slowly painting the world outside in shades of deep, quiet blue and white. The traveler, for that is what they were, had arrived just as the last light of the day was fading. They had come seeking this very silence, this pocket of peace away from the noise and hurry of a life that had become too loud. The journey had been long, but every step through the deepening snow had been a step away from that noise. Now, they sat in the armchair, a heavy woolen blanket draped over their legs, the warmth of the stove seeping into their tired bones. Their hands were wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug, the heat from the tea inside radiating out, warming their palms. The only sounds were the crackling fire, the whisper of the snow against the window, and the slow, steady rhythm of their own breathing, which seemed to synchronize with the natural pulse of the cabin. They took a sip of the tea. It was a simple brew, strong and slightly bitter, with a hint of honey that had been added from a small, dusty jar. The warmth spread through their chest, a comforting and familiar sensation. They let their gaze wander across the room, taking in the details they had been too tired to notice upon arrival. A stack of firewood neatly piled beside the stove, the bark still smelling of the cold forest, a small shelf of books, their spines a rainbow of muted colors, their titles worn and indistinct. A simple hand-woven rug on the worn wooden floor, its patterns faded and softened by time. It was a place that felt lived in, cared for, a space that had witnessed countless quiet nights just like this one. The fire in the stove settled, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. The sound was a soft, contented sigh. The traveler leaned their head back against the chair, the rough wool of the blanket a pleasant texture against their cheek. The warmth was almost overwhelming now, a heavy, drowsy embrace that was beginning to pull at the edges of their consciousness. They closed their eyes, and the world narrowed to the sounds and sensations around them. The scratch of the wool, the even heat on their face, the low murmur of the wind outside. It was a symphony of comfort. It felt safe to let the mind wander here, to let thoughts drift and dissolve like the snowflakes against the glass. The snow continued its ceaseless descent. The traveler opened their eyes and looked towards the window, their reflection a faint ghost superimposed on the dark, snowy scene outside. The world beyond the glass was a study in monochrome: the white snow, the dark trunks of the pines, the deep, fathomless blue of the night sky. It was a landscape stripped of everything but its essence, a beautiful and stark simplicity. They could barely see the path that had led them here, already buried under a fresh layer of white. But they felt no anxiety, no sense of being trapped. The feeling was one of profound release. The storm was not a threat, but a cocoon, a soft barrier that held the world away. A log in the fire shifted, sending a wave of warmth that rolled across the room like a gentle tide. The traveler pulled the blanket a little higher, tucking it under their chin. Their gaze drifted to the book on the table. It was a collection of old poems, the kind that described landscapes and feelings in equal measure. They had no desire to read it. The story unfolding outside, silent and slow, was more compelling. The way the snow clung to the branches, the way the wind sculpted the drifts. It was a narrative being written in real time, a quiet epic of winter's slow takeover. They were content to simply be a spectator, a quiet witness to the beauty of the night. A feeling of deep, bone-tired contentment settled over them, not the tiredness of exhaustion, but the pleasant fatigue of a day well spent in a place that felt like a sanctuary. They let their mind drift to other places, other winters. Memories surfaced, soft and blurred around the edges. The sound of bells from a distant sleigh, the sharp, clean smell of snow on a winter morning, the taste of ice on the wind. These thoughts came and went like clouds passing over the moon, their arrival and departure leaving no trace but a lingering sense of warmth. The present was the only thing that felt real now. The heat, the silence, the slow, steady rhythm of the falling snow. Time in this place was a strange and malleable thing. It didn't pass in the usual way. It felt more like it pooled and deepened, like the snow accumulating in drifts outside. The traveler had no need for a clock. The only markers of time were the sinking of the logs in the stove, the thickening of the frost on the window, and the increasingly somnolent weight of the darkness outside. It felt as if the night was growing deeper and more profound, wrapping the cabin in layers of hushed and silent tranquility. The wind rose and fell in its endless, rhythmic sighs. It had become a sound as natural as their own heartbeat. They began to feel a gentle, almost hypnotic pull toward sleep. It started in their limbs, a heavy, liquid warmth that made them feel deeply rooted to the chair. Their thoughts became slower, less distinct, like shapes seen through a thick fog. They were aware of the sound of their own breathing, slow and even, mingling with the gentle snoring of the fire. The boundary between the inside and the outside, between themselves and the room, was beginning to soften. They were becoming a part of this quiet space, a part of the night. The warm light of the lamp felt like the soft glow of a distant memory of a sunset, a golden haze that signaled the end of a long day. The traveler's hand loosened its hold on the mug, which was now only warm to the touch. They let their eyes drift closed once more, this time for a longer, more deliberate pause. The darkness behind their eyelids was a warm and comfortable space, like the inside of the cabin itself. The sounds of the night became a soft lullaby. The crackling fire was a gentle percussion, the wind a low, mournful melody, and the sifting snow a quiet, hissing whisper. It was a song of pure, unadulterated peace. They surrendered to it completely. The last thing they were aware of was the feeling of the heavy blanket upon them, and the deep, unwavering certainty that they were perfectly, utterly safe. The fire in the stove had burned down to a soft, radiant bed of coals, a deep orange glow that pulsed slowly like a sleeping heart. The shadows in the room were longer now, deeper, merging together into a vast, comforting darkness. The only light came from the coals and the dying lamp, a soft amber twilight that seemed to emanate from the very air itself. The room was silent, save for the soft, steady rhythm of breath, a sound so peaceful it seemed to blend with the quiet sigh of the settling cabin. The storm was a gentle, distant memory. I dast, war, hate. The world was nothing but this warm, quiet space, a cocoon of silence and peace. The stillness was absolute. It was the kind of profound quiet that had weight and texture, a deep, velvety silence that felt like a soft blanket drawn over the world. The traveler was no longer thinking, no longer feeling the boundaries of their own body. They were simply a point of awareness, floating in a warm, dark sea of contentment. The scent of wood smoke and pine was a faint, sweet perfume in the air. The distant moan of the wind was a soft, distant whisper, a sound from another world entirely. There was no past, no future, only this eternal, peaceful moment. The small cabin, a vessel of warmth and light, had become a sanctuary of pure being, a quiet harbor where the soul could rest. A single tiny log shifted in the stove, sending a small puff of ash into the air, and a brief, gentle flicker of light that danced across the ceiling before fading. It was a tiny, final gesture, a last effort before succumbing to the long, quiet sleep of the night. The travelers stirred slightly, a soft, contented sigh escaping their lips, before sinking deeper into the arms of the chair, into the depths of the warm blanket, into the welcoming embrace of sleep. The night was long, and it was theirs to possess. The snow continued to fall, a soft, white curtain that shielded them from the rest of the world. The cabin held them close, a keeper of secrets and a guardian of dreams. In the heart of the winter forest, in a world of pure, untouched white, a single warm light still burned, a beacon of peace in the silent, endless night. And the light, too, slowly began to fade, leaving only the gentle, rhythmic breathing of the sleeping traveler and the soft, endless whisper of the snow. The hours passed, marked only by the slow, steady decline of the fire and the continued, silent fall of the snow. The cabin settled, its wooden beams groaning softly as they cooled. The frost on the window thickened, its intricate patterns spreading and intertwining like the branches of a winter tree. The travelers slept on, undisturbed, their dreams gentle and formless, a soft, warm haze that held them in a state of deep, restorative rest. There was no urgency, no need to wake, no demands to meet. There was only the night and the silence and the endless, patient falling of the snow. As the night reached its darkest hour, the fire in the stove finally gave out, its last ember fading to a soft gray ash. The warmth in the room began to slowly dissipate, replaced by a cool, gentle chill that crept in from the walls and the floor. The travelers stirred, a faint shiver running through them. But before the cold could truly reach them, they burrowed deeper into the blanket, pulling it tight around their shoulders, seeking and finding the last vestiges of warmth. A soft, contented sigh escaped their lips, a small cloud of breath that vanished into the darkness, and then they were still again, sleeping, safe, and at peace. The morning would come eventually, bringing with it the soft, gray light of a winter dawn. The traveler would wake slowly, feeling refreshed and renewed, their mind clear and their heart light. They would build a new fire, brew a new pot of tea, and look out at the snow-covered forest with a sense of wonder and gratitude. But that was a story for another time. For now, there was only the night, only the silence, only the deep, peaceful sleep of a soul that had finally found its rest. The cabin held them, a keeper of dreams, a guardian of peace. The snow fell, a soft white blanket that muffled the world and held it in a state of quiet suspension. The wind whispered its ancient lullaby, a song of the earth and the sky and the vast endless spaces between. And in the heart of the winter forest, in a small warm room, the travelers slept on, their dreams gentle, their spirit quiet, their soul at one with the deep healing silence of the night. The stillness was complete, the peace was absolute. The night wore on, soft and unbroken. The snow piled high against the walls of the cabin, a soft, insulating blanket that held the cold at bay. The wind, now a mere whisper, sang its slow, mournful song through the branches of the pines. The stars, hidden behind the clouds, were a distant, forgotten promise. The traveler dreamed of nothing and everything. They dreamed of the warmth of the fire, the scent of the pine, the feel of the rough wool against their skin. They dreamed of the silence, and it was the most beautiful dream of all. The cabin, the fire, the snow, the silence. They were all one thing, one eternal, peaceful moment held in the heart of the winter night. A single, soft sound broke the stillness, the hoot of an owl, distant and faint, a call that was answered by silence. Traveler did not stir. The sound was a part of the night, a natural note in the quiet symphony of the forest. It was a reminder that they were not alone, that the world was full of other lives, other rhythms, other moments of peace. And then the sound faded, and the silence was complete once more. The cabin settled deeper into its quiet, the last traces of heat fading, the last embers glowing a soft, almost imperceptible red. The night was long, and it was perfect. The traveler's breath was a soft, steady rhythm, a gentle pulse that marked the passage of time. They were no longer a separate entity, no longer a solitary presence in a vast and silent world. They were a part of the cabin, a part of the fire, a part of the snow and the wind and the deep, dark sky. They were a part of the night, and the night was a part of them. It was a union of spirit and silence, a melting of boundaries, a merging with the eternal. And in that merging, they found a peace so profound, so complete, that it could only be described as home. The snow fell, the wind sighed, the cabin settled, and the traveler slept. The night held them in its gentle embrace, a mother rocking a child, a lover holding a beloved. There was no time here, no past, no future, only this endless, still moment. The fire was gone, the warmth was fading, but the peace remained, a glow that no cold could touch, no storm could quench. The traveler was safe, was warm, was whole, and the night, the beautiful, silent, infinite night, watched over them with a love that was as old as the stars and as new as the falling snow. When the first light of dawn finally crept over the horizon, it found the cabin quiet and still. The snow had stopped falling, leaving a world of pristine white, unmarked and untouched. The window was fogged, the fire was cold, and the traveler was asleep. They had not stirred since the embers had faded, had not moved since the owl had called. They lay in the armchair, wrapped in the blanket, their face peaceful, their breathing slow and steady. The dawnlight was soft and gray, a gentle awakening that whispered of new beginnings. But the traveler did not wake, not yet. I repper sober. However, safety. There was still time for sleep, still time for rest, still time for the quiet, healing peace of the night. The cabin, too, seemed to be sleeping, its wooden bones still and silent, its heart beating only in the memory of the fire. The snow covered the roof, the walls, the windows, a soft white cocoon that held the cabin in its embrace. The world was new, was clean, was reborn, and in the heart of that new world, The traveler dreamed on, their dreams soft and formless, a gentle preparation for the waking that was to come. The night had been long, but it had been kind. The peace had been deep, but it had been healing. And now, as the light slowly, gently brightened, the traveler began to stir, to shift, to slowly, softly return to the world. The first thing they felt was the warmth of the blanket, the last vestiges of the night's comfort. The second thing was the coolness of the air, a gentle reminder that the fire had gone out. They opened their eyes slowly, blinking against the soft gray light. They felt different, lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from their shoulders. The tension was gone, the worry was gone, the endless, spinning thoughts were gone. There was only a deep, quiet peace, a calm that was unshakable and profound. They sat up slowly, letting the blanket fall from their shoulders, and looked around the room. It was the same room, the same walls, the same stove, the same bookshelf. But it looked different, felt different. It looked like home. They rose from the chair, stretching their arms above their head, feeling the pleasant ache of a long, deep sleep. They walked to the window and looked out at the snow-covered forest. The world was white and still, a landscape of pure beauty. The sun was rising, a soft orange glow that painted the clouds in shades of pink and gold. The snow sparkled, a million tiny diamonds scattered across the earth. Traveler smiled, a wide, genuine smile that reached their eyes. They had found what they had been looking for. They had found peace, and they knew, with a certainty that was absolute, that they would carry it with them wherever they went. The night was over, but the peace remained. And it always would. They turned from the window and looked back at the small cabin that had held them so gently through the long, cold night. It was a modest place, humble and unassuming, but it had given them something precious. It had given them rest. It had given them silence. It had given them back to themselves. They moved to the stove, now cold and dark, and opened its small iron door. Inside, a bed of soft gray ash lay still and quiet, the final remains of the fire that had kept them warm. They knelt down and gently touched the ash, feeling its soft, powdery texture against their fingertips. It was cool now, but it still held the memory of the heat that had once lived there. They smiled again, a soft, gentle smile, and closed the stove door. They would build a new fire soon, but not yet. For now, they wanted to hold on to the quiet for just a little while longer. They walked to the small kitchenette and filled the kettle with fresh, cold water from a jug. They placed it on the small counter and lit the gas burner beneath it, the soft blue flame hissing to life. The sound was a gentle, familiar one, a small comfort in the quiet of the morning. They reached for the tin of tea leaves, their fingers brushing against its cool, smooth surface. They measured out the leaves, watching them fall into the pot with a soft, rustling sound. The water began to heat, small bubbles forming at the bottom of the kettle, rising slowly to the surface. The traveler waited, patient and still, watching the steam begin to curl and rise from the spout. The room was slowly filling with light, the soft gray glow of dawn seeping through the frosted windows. The traveler poured the hot water into the teapot, watching the leaves swirl and dance in the steaming liquid. The scent of the tea began to rise, a familiar, comforting aroma that filled the small space. They breathed it in deeply, letting it settle in their chest. It was a simple pleasure, this small ritual of making tea, but it was one that grounded them, that connected them to the present moment. They carried the teapot and a fresh mug back to the armchair, setting them on the small wooden table beside the book of poems. They sat down in the chair, pulling the blanket back over their legs, and poured themselves a cup of tea. The steam rose in a gentle curl, carrying the scent of the leaves into the air. They wrapped their hands around the warm mug, feeling the heat seep into their palms, and took a slow, careful sip. The tea was hot and slightly bitter, with a hint of something floral, something delicate. It was perfect. They set the mug down and picked up the book of poems, opening it to a page they had marked long ago. The words were familiar, worn and softened by many readings. They began to read, slowly, softly, letting the rhythms of the verses wash over them like a gentle tide. The light outside continued to grow, the soft gray giving way to a pale, gentle gold. The traveler read for a while, letting the poems carry them through the quiet morning. They read of forests and streams, of the silence of winter and the promise of spring. They read of love and loss, and the small, beautiful moments that made up a life. And as they read, they felt a deep, quiet joy settle into their bones. It was not the joy of excitement or triumph, but the joy of simply being alive, of being present, of being here. The night had given them peace. The morning was giving them hope. They finished the poem and closed the book, setting it gently back on the table. They took another sip of the tea, feeling its warmth spread through their chest. They looked around the cabin one more time, taking in all its details, committing them to memory. The rough-hewn logs, the worn wooden floor, the small bookshelf, the cold stove. It was a simple place, but it was a place of healing. They would leave soon, but they would carry this place with them in their heart, in their memory. It would be a touchstone, a reminder of the peace that was always possible, always waiting, just beyond the noise of the world. They rose from the chair one last time, setting the mug down on the table. They folded the blanket neatly and placed it on the chair, a small gesture of respect for the space that had given them so much. They gathered their things, their coat, their bag, their boots. They pulled on their boots, lacing them up with slow, deliberate movements. They were in no hurry. The day was long, and the road was waiting, but there was no rush. There was only the quiet, steady rhythm of the morning, the soft light of the dawn, and the deep, abiding peace that had taken root in their soul. They walked to the door and paused, their hand resting on the handle. They looked back at the room, at the chair, at the stove, at the window with its frost and its light. They took a deep breath, filling their lungs with the scent of the cabin, the scent of wood smoke and pine and old, familiar things. And then they smiled, a soft, gentle smile, and opened the door. The cold air rushed in, sharp and clean, and they stepped out into the snow. The world was white and still, a vast expanse of untouched beauty. The sun was rising higher now, its light painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. The traveler walked a few steps, their boots crunching softly in the fresh powder. They turned and looked back at the cabin, a small, warm shape nestled in the heart of the winter forest. It was a place of peace, a place of healing, a place of rest, and they carried that peace with them, a quiet flame that would never go out. They turned and walked towards the path that would lead them back to the world. But they walked slowly, deliberately, savoring every moment, every breath, every step. There was no rush, there was no hurry. There was only the quiet, steady rhythm of the morning, the soft light of the dawn, and the deep, abiding peace that had found a home in their heart. The forest was silent, save for the soft crunch of their boots in the snow and the distant call of a bird, a single, clear note that rose and fell in the crisp morning air. They walked on, their steps light, their spirit free. The path stretched out before them, winding through the snow-covered trees, and they followed it with a sense of quiet confidence. They did not know what lay ahead, but they did not need to know. They had found what they had been searching for. They had found peace, and they knew that it would be with them always, no matter where the road led. The cabin grew smaller behind them, a distant, dark shape against the white expanse. But its warmth, its silence, its peace remained with them. They carried it in their heart, in their breath, in the quiet rhythm of their steps. The snow was soft under their feet, the air was crisp and clean, and the sun was warm on their face. It was a new day, a new beginning, a new chapter, and they were ready for it. Instead, the journey was not over, it had only just begun. They walked on, their steps slow and steady, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The forest was quiet, peaceful, and full of a deep, ancient stillness. They felt a part of it now, a part of the snow and the trees and the sky. They were connected to this place, to this moment, to this peace, and as they walked, they knew with a certainty that was absolute that they would always carry this feeling with them. The cabin would stay with them. The night would stay with them, would help Gob. Of then, the peace would stay with them. And they would never, ever forget the path curved ahead, disappearing between two tall pines. They followed it, their footsteps leaving a trail in the fresh snow. Behind them, the cabin sat silent and still, a guardian of peace, a keeper of dreams. The sun rose higher, its light spreading across the snow like a warm, golden blanket. The day was new, and it was full of promise. And the traveler, their heart light and their spirit free, walked on into the light. Journey continued. As all journeys do, the peace they had found would never leave them. It was a part of them now, woven into the fabric of their being, as deep and as enduring as the winter snow. And as they walked, they smiled, a soft, gentle smile that spoke of a quiet joy, a deep and abiding contentment. They had found their rest, they had found their peace, and they would carry it with them, always, wherever they went. The forest gave way to a small clearing, and the path led on, winding through the trees and into the distance. The traveler paused for a moment, looking back one last time. The cabin was no longer visible, hidden by the trees and the snow, but they could still feel it, a warm presence in their heart, a quiet flame that would never go out. They turned back to the path and continued on, their steps light and steady, their spirit calm and free. The journey was long, but they were not afraid. They had found what they had been searching for, and they would always carry it with them. The snow sparkled under the rising sun, a million tiny diamonds scattered across the earth. The birds sang their quiet morning songs. The wind whispered through the trees, and the traveler walked on, their heart full of peace, their soul full of light. The journey had begun, and it was beautiful. The traveler walked for a long time, their steps steady and sure, their heart light and free. The forest was a world of quiet beauty, a landscape of pure white and deep shadow. The snow muffled every sound, creating a cocoon of silence that wrapped around them like a soft blanket. They felt a deep sense of connection to this place, to the trees and the snow and the sky. They were a part of it now, woven into its fabric, a thread in the tapestry of the winter morning. The sun rose higher, its light warming their face, and they walked on, their spirit calm and their mind at peace. The path led them through a grove of ancient pines, their branches heavy with snow, their trunks dark and strong. The traveler paused for a moment, looking up at the towering trees, their tops disappearing into the soft gray sky. They were old, these trees, older than anyone could remember. They had stood here for centuries, watching the seasons pass, the snow fall, the sun rise and set. They were a reminder of the deep, enduring rhythms of the earth, of the cycles of life and death and renewal. The traveler felt a sense of awe, a quiet reverence for the ancient beauty of the forest. They were small, so small, in the face of such vastness, but they were not insignificant. Oh, they were a part of it all. They continued on, their steps leaving a trail of footprints in the fresh snow. The forest was alive with a quiet, hidden energy, a pulse that could only be felt in the stillness. A bird called from somewhere deep in the trees, a single clear note that rose and fell like a question. Another answered, a softer, gentler sound, and then the silence returned. The travelers smiled, feeling a connection to these unseen creatures, these small, secret lives that shared this place with them. They were all part of the same quiet symphony, the same deep, ancient song of the earth. The path began to rise, climbing a gentle slope that led up through the trees. The traveler climbed slowly, savoring the feeling of the cold air on their face, the warmth of the sun on their back. The snow was deeper here, soft and powdery, and their boots sank into it with each step. They paused at the top of the rise, catching their breath, and looked out at the view before them. The forest spread out below, a vast expanse of white and dark green, stretching to the horizon and beyond. The sky was a soft, pale blue, dotted with wispy clouds that glowed pink and gold in the morning light. It was a sight of pure, breathtaking beauty. They stood there for a long moment, drinking in the view, feeling the wind on their face and the sun on their skin. They felt a deep sense of gratitude, a thankfulness for this place, for this moment, for the peace they had found. They had come seeking rest, and they had found it. They had come seeking silence, and they had found it. They had come seeking themselves, and they had found that too. They were not the same person who had arrived at the cabin the night before. They were changed, transformed, renewed. The night had healed them, and the morning was giving them strength. They took a deep breath, filling their lungs with the crisp, clean air, and let it out slowly, a long, contented sigh. Then they turned and began to walk again, following the path as it wound its way down the other side of the slope, leading them deeper into the forest and further from the cabin. But they did not feel a sense of loss. The cabin would always be with them, a warm memory in their heart, a quiet flame that would never go out. They carried its peace with them, a constant companion on the journey ahead. The forest began to change as they walked, the dense pines giving way to a more open landscape of birch and oak. The snow was still deep, but the trees were thinner here, allowing more light to filter through. The traveler walked on, their steps light and steady, their mind calm and clear. They thought about the night, about the fire, about the quiet peace of the cabin. They thought about the journey that had brought them here, the long road that had led them to this place of rest. And they thought about the journey that lay ahead, the road that would lead them back to the world, back to their life, back to all the things they had left behind. But they were not afraid. The peace they had found was not fragile. It was not something that could be taken away by the noise and chaos of the world. It was a deep, abiding peace, rooted in their soul, nourished by the silence of the night and the warmth of the fire. It was a part of them now, as real and as lasting as the snow on the ground, as the trees in the forest, as the sky above. They carried it with them, a quiet strength, a steady light, a source of calm in a world that was often anything but calm. They walked on, their steps slow and deliberate, savoring every moment, every breath, every step. The forest was alive with a quiet beauty, a stillness that spoke of ancient things and deep, enduring rhythms. The traveler felt a part of it all, connected to the earth and the sky and the wind that whispered through the trees. They were not separate from this place. They were a part of it, a thread in the tapestry of the winter morning. And they knew, with a certainty that was absolute, that this connection would never be broken. The path led them to a small stream, its waters dark and still, frozen in the grip of winter. The traveler paused at its edge, looking down at the smooth, icy surface. The ice was thick and clear, revealing the dark, rushing water beneath. It was a reminder of the life that continued, even in the deepest cold, even in the stillness of winter. The traveler knelt down and touched the ice, feeling its smooth, cold surface under their fingertips. It was a small gesture, a simple connection, but it felt profound. They were touching the heart of winter, feeling its pulse, its quiet, enduring life. They rose and continued on, crossing the stream on a small wooden bridge that had been worn smooth by time and weather. Their footsteps echoed softly on the old planks, a gentle rhythm that blended with the whisper of the wind and the distant call of a bird. They walked on, their spirit light, their heart full. The journey was long, but they were not tired. They were at peace, truly and deeply at peace, and that peace gave them strength. The forest began to thin, and the path opened into a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a single ancient oak, its branches bare and stark against the pale blue sky. The traveler paused, drawn to the tree, and walked towards it. They reached out and touched its bark, feeling its rough, textured surface under their palm. It was old, this tree, older than anyone could remember. It had stood here for centuries, through countless winters, countless storms, countless seasons of change. It was a symbol of endurance, of strength, of the deep, quiet resilience of life. They stood there for a long moment, their hand resting on the rough bark, feeling the deep, steady pulse of the tree. They felt a connection to it, a kinship with its quiet strength, its patient endurance. They had been through their own winters, their own storms, their own seasons of change, and like this tree, they had endured. They had grown stronger, deeper, more rooted. The night in the cabin had been a gift, a moment of rest, a chance to heal. But the strength had always been there, within them, waiting to be found. They took their hand from the tree and turned to look at the path ahead. It led out of the clearing, winding through the trees and towards the distant horizon. The road back to the world. The road back to life. They took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill their lungs, and smiled. They were ready. Was every terming without there? They were ready to go back, ready to face whatever lay ahead, ready to live their life with the peace they had found. The journey was not over. It was just beginning. They walked on, their steps slow and steady, their heart light and free. The forest whispered around them, a soft, gentle murmur that spoke of ancient things and quiet, enduring beauty. They were a part of it now, woven into its fabric, a thread in the tapestry of the winter morning. And they knew, with a certainty that was absolute, that the peace they had found would stay with them, always, wherever they went. The path led them out of the forest and into a world of open fields and rolling hills, all covered in a blanket of pristine white. Traveler paused at the edge of the forest, looking out at the vast, open landscape before them. The sun was high now, its light bright and warm, painting the snow in shades of gold and white. They smiled, a wide, genuine smile that reached their eyes, and stepped forward. They had found what they had been looking for. They had found peace, and they would carry it with them, always, wherever they went. Journey was beautiful, and it was just beginning.